Parag, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a special one because we're doing it from 111. Of course, we're socially distanced in between different rooms, but I'm super happy to be back in here and to be able to interview you here. So let's talk a bit about the creation of Click.ai. Obviously, you'd founded some prior companies in How's That In and Integrated Analytics in India. But yeah, let's talk about how Click.ai came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, very quick background about me is graduated as a computer science engineer back in late 2000s. Worked with a bunch of real estate tech startups. So that's how I got into real estate, and by virtue of multiple jobs, I ended up working in a mortgage-backed securities and credit risk startup, where we're building some technology solutions for some of the U.S. hedge funds and other investment managers. So that was my entry point into commercial real estate as such. In 2013, post that job, I started a company called Integrated Analytics, which was a technology platform. So we were building analytics software for commercial real estate investment teams. Effectively, we became like a boutique consulting firm in that space, where we ended up working with a lot of large investment managers and mortgage banks. So typically we became their middle office in India, and I scaled that business to about 30, 40 employees. And because we were doing so much of deal transaction support work for these customers, a lot of similar use cases were appearing. So we decided that why don't we build a software platform to capture these kind of repetitive workflows and enhance the transaction due diligence within the space. And that was the grounding idea for Click.ai. So today what we're doing is Click.ai is building a technology platform that enhances and make that commercial real estate transaction due diligence quicker.
Right. And you had on the ground experience, right? Basically being a professional services consulting firm, doing a lot of the work manually, seeing it being done slowly. So you had the inside view immediately of how transactions actually worked, and you knew that clients were frustrated. Is that some of what you were seeing?
That's correct. That's correct. So, we ended up, so I ran that previous business for about 4 years. And during that time, we ended up working with almost like 4 to 5 thousand transactions. So we did have a pretty good base in terms of what we want to do, what are the use cases we want to capture. And that's how we got started with Click.
Awesome. Uh, you've said in another interview that you felt that Click AI had to be a North America branded company. Can you kind of expand on what you meant by that and how you feel about that now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was kind of like, I would say, a natural progression because I was building and doing all this work from India. The difference in the time zone was becoming a little hectic for us to, first of all, as a founder, I had to do business development, talk to customers. So it was kind of like a natural progression for us to be somewhere close to New York and the financial markets in North America. And during my multiple trips, my trips, business trips, I decided Toronto would be the place for me. We had a great support structure extended through the Canadian consulate and Verizon Futures here in Canada. So that was a very, very strategic move, and I'm happy to have done that.
Yeah, and I mean, and we're always big on immigration, especially for tech founders and talented people like yourselves to come here. How easy was that process? I mean, how did you land on Toronto? Were you happy with the process
Yeah, the process was quite simple. So I was obviously exploring both countries, US and Canada.
in Canada?
US would have been a little difficult route for us because, being a little smaller company, we had to hire lawyers and all these things. So I was not really mentally prepared to go that route. But, I explored this really cool program called Canada Startup Visa, which is especially designed for someone like me, where they're looking to have help, foreign entrepreneurs outside of North America who's selling into the North American customer base. And so for that, that's a pretty easy route for us. And that's how I moved. So the process was quite straightforward. It took me about 2 weeks to get my work permit and initiate my permanent residency, and it was pretty streamlined. I'm quite impressed with that.
That's awesome. And it was similar for the team, right? Like half of the team roughly is here, half of them in India.
That's correct. So myself, my founder, we moved, and eventually we started building out our team here in Canada. We still have our split in India, but that's how we structure globally.
And another question about the Canadian landscape. So you raised a seed round here. from a few different funds. Like, how did you find the venture capital process? I mean, I think the CRE space is still fairly new and it's large and illiquid, and there needs to be more money to pour into some tech to help it out. But how did you find that?
Yeah, so personally, and having talked to a lot of founders, I think seed raising the seed round is one of the toughest round,
Yeah.
because when you don't have the product market fit, revenues are just starting to build out. So obviously, started socializing this investment proposal to some of the real estate advisors, and I was talking to some senior people in the industry. So part of our money came from these professionals who within the real estate who in Canada who thought we were building something really useful, and some of the rest of the money came from our relationship in Middle East with one of the family offices of a venture fund, and so that's how we went about it. We did had some kind of like debt we raised from friends and family that helped along the way as well. I think that's, I personally feel seed round is the toughest round to raise, and that's how we went about it.
That's definitely, yeah, that's one of the big pieces about the Canadian area specifically, is that it gets easier past them, but pretty much seed and then the really late rounds when you get to D and E is can
Yeah.
be a bit harder. But glad to hear that the process was good for you. Let's talk about commercial real estate, right? Like, it's an old industry, very relationship driven traditionally, right? But now due to COVID, a lot of things have been accelerated. We've had Dean Hopkins from Oxford Properties on the podcast saying that they had to suddenly find new technology to do rent relief and virtual tours. How has it been? Most all sales early are founder led, and you're selling to very large established companies. How has that process been? How did you approach it?
Yeah, so just on very specific note on COVID, definitely has accelerated sales. Part of the reason for that is most of the, at least on the institutional client side, when you have a little bit bigger team, the companies are looking for tools and software platforms to boost up efficiency of their employees, because a lot of them are remote now. So that obviously helped us to a certain extent. In commercial real estate, also where he's talking about specifically with the industry, there is a different, digital transformation drive that's going on, and most companies are looking for software solutions to, compete in the market. The margins are squeezing, so that's how I look at it. Automation, in my view, has gone mainstream, and AI and machine learning where we really fit in. So that's how it's a mixed bag. Like, initially we used to go to conferences and build relationship. Now it's a mix of all things.
Yeah, so I could see COVID definitely driving up inbound, and I've seen that for similar companies, right? So companies are actually now required to figure this out and actually automate a lot of these processes, especially if they were in person or people writing on paper. Talk about like your first few big clients, because you sold to some bigger firms. Did you already have some of those relationships from prior companies? Like, who did you reach out to when you guys were just beginning?
Yeah, so we actually opened up the platform in 2018. We were just socializing the idea with some of the customers. We were attending some industry events. In 2019, we worked with a handful of customers. Part of them came through our website itself, like they were looking for a solution like ours to enhance their employee productivity. And some of the largest, one of the largest bank we sold to, we met them at a conference. And while we, from a product perspective, we were a little early, but eventually we were able to get into the door. So we worked with a handful of customers, and that's where we really think we understood what the industry is looking for, and we made very quick changes around our platform, and that was one of the strategy we deployed. So we didn't really go right, left, and center and hire a lot of salespeople and
Mm.
knock on as many doors. We took our time to kind of really understand what they want, and now we're in a position that we can deploy more sales staff and go about it.
Got it. So you guys kind of did almost a little customer advisory board. You took a year, you really dug deep on some of these enterprises, you got some beta testers, and you really kind of looked at exactly what they were using, what they weren't, before trying to blow things out and going back and releasing a feature and hiring a big sales team.
Exactly. Like, I would say a good part of our acceptance in the market of the product goes to our customers sharing their use cases with us, and and definitely thanks to our technology team to make those enhancements really quickly.
In terms of some of those sales themselves, because we always love to get the sense of founder-led sales early and how some of the bigger contracts come through. Because as you know, part of it's the raising the seed round. It's also getting those first few customers, right? Nobody wants to be the first one to buy new technology usually, but they'll be the third and fourth and fifth. What sorts of terms would you kind of put down? Like, were there I've talked to founders who said, we did a POC for $50,000 and then we ended up rolling them into a longer term subscription. Did you do just you're going to be beta tester for a year and then we're going to kind of grandfather you into some pricing? Like how did you approach that? Because you need to take in some money, but you also need to get the feedback and they're taking a little bit of a risk on you. Like how did that work for you guys?
Yeah, for us, obviously, the biggest contract that we had today started with free pilots and POCs with customers. I think one of the things that works mostly for us is like we had a pretty coming from a customer support background, running in a consulting firm, that really enhanced the customer experience, and that still is a winning feature for us. So besides the product, an enhanced customer support, because financial industry does care about that to a certain extent. So POC, starting with free trials, letting their entire team, use it for a little while. And we feel that it's a little bit of fundamental change in how they were doing. So you need to build that habit. And that's what we did with our customer teams.
And I think that you probably noticed, right? So you're actually doing this ahead of the game, ahead of a lot of other companies, this product-led type approach, right? Where you see a lot of companies shying away from that, afraid they're going to give away the best feature of their product for free. But I think you guys did it in a really methodical way where you were able to segment out your ideal client base and found out that different bases of clients actually want different things from the platform. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a view we have, like you really can't understand the data unless you have enough to really monitor it, right? So if you really do not expose the platform, and I come from an open source technology background, so my view is that anything that has worked in residential, people are very collaborative in residential real estate, will happen in commercial too. So we are one of the companies who not only is building the technology, we're also opening up our technology platform. We want collaboration, and that's what's going to happen. And that's kind of the theme.
Let's talk a little bit about 2021, right? It's a unique year for anybody looking to do business planning after 2020. We're kind of unsure here in Canada when things are exactly going to go back to normal. We all know that it's going to go back to normal at some point. We just don't know when. How did you approach? I want to get into feature sets and how you guys prioritize what to build this year. But just from a founder planning a business in 2021, how did you look at actually planning for this year versus a normal year? Because I don't think it was an exercise of just you can say, hey, we've got this revenue target. Each salesperson is going to have this number over their head. We need to hire 10 salespeople and go. You really have to probably be a lot more thoughtful about approaching this year. So, yeah, how did you do it?
Yeah, so there are, obviously some product related guidelines we have, what we want to release from a totally new product perspective. However, so what we have done is we have separated the two teams out of the one which is leading the charge for new product development is totally separate than the one who's kind of like capturing these enhances, because some of the customer requests that we're receiving are incredibly useful to us, because we're able to structure the product well, the price it really well, and differentiate and bring create different kind of pricing structure around it. So both components are important. The way we have approached it, we just have different product teams around it.
Yeah. I do want to talk about how you do so some of those feature requests and how you prioritize those, right? So your very first features, I think, were around underwriting and lending, and you just knew that was going to be the lowest hanging fruit with the highest value. And then you had said in another interview that you had some features that you plan to release like at the end of 2021 that have just become so critical that now you've kind of shifted that to basically as soon as possible. I don't know, you don't have to reveal what those are, but basically like how are you going to be able to just do them much, much faster than you planned? Yeah, would love to hear more about that.
Absolutely. So, obviously, that's part of to accelerate some of the product development is part of a function of, how fast we can hire as well. So to accelerate that, we are in a kind of like looking at raising another round and building our team here. That's one set. And going to the market and, having more customer experiences and what features they want is something with the current product we're trying to do to accelerate things.
Interesting. Like in terms of the sales, the outgoing sales now, because you're starting to switch from founder-led sales to an actual sales process and hiring some sales folks. How are you thinking about that? Like what are the next steps for you guys there? What are some of the goals around some of your target markets, right? You've got this good inbound flow. You've closed some deals. How are you looking to expand that without obviously going too crazy and hiring a bunch of like way too many salespeople at once?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently, what we did is we really structured a sales process around how we sell. So all the leads that are coming now, we have some level of data around what we from a product perspective, free trial to signups. We separated the product from the reporting feature to be just only paid for paid customers. So that has become a strong sales hook point for us in terms of conversion. Now that we have that kind of process, I think it's about hiring the right person. So we're building out that sales team right now. We have a process. We have good view on like how many out of 10 leads, how many convert, and what are the customers wanting. I would say though, like, traditionally we have sold into enterprise B2B, which is where, because of the productivity suite and the automation that we bring to market, the value prop is all very obvious to larger companies because they immediately see a lot of, cost
Right.
benefits to it. However, selling into the smaller segment of the market, smaller private equity funds, this is something that we have created the process recently, and that's how we want to double down and go about it, sales at this point.
Interesting. So you're thinking that if you like with the sales team, you potentially want them to target more so the SME side, like the actual private equity markets instead of, okay, is that because you're finding success with the enterprises actually coming to you guys inbound, and so you don't really need to chase them as much, or like what's driving that?
That's correct. Most of the enterprise B2B are either inbound because these are led by digital transformation team at these companies.
Right.
Some of them, obviously, when we reach out, because of the unique product fit, it makes sense, and especially to the commercial real estate lending and investment sales brokerage divisions. The positioning is different for both type of customers
For
because
sure.
the value prop is different to each, and that's what we recently tried to figure out.
So you said you're considering raising another round. What's the vision for Click in the next like 3 to 5 years? Like where do you guys want to be? How big is the team? Just kind of give us some of that vision.
Yeah, I'd start with what are we trying to achieve as a company. I think the biggest vision that we have is of the company is that today there is a lot of work that goes on, which is manual, and that's commercial real estate investment itself takes number of months. Our biggest goal really is to cut that down into under a couple of weeks, and it's a step-by-step process for which you need to meticulously design and develop software. So that's really the big picture. Our goal from 2 to 3 year period in terms of where it would be, we look ourselves as about 100 employee team selling into, today we're selling into 15 to 20 customers. We would like to scale it to about 100 200 customers tangibly. So these are some high level data how we look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about hypergrowth, right? And you guys have experienced that quite a bit already. I mean, you went from 2 to 30 employees. As you imagine, Click growing to 100, 150, 250 people, start to get past that Dunbar number, right? Where you no longer know everyone's name and details about them. What are some of the key principles that you'll use in your mind as you grow into not a manager of 30 people, but a manager of potentially 150, 200, maybe like 1,000? How do you think of that?
Yeah, I think in terms of scaling, what most founders would realize that you need a playbook for every divisions. Like for sales, there's a playbook that you have to deploy, and those playbooks needs to be in place for from monitoring KPI perspective. For technology, it's a totally different way how we do it. So we have much more structured way now today of hiring and recruiting someone, and where we're gonna look for those leads from. And that's how I think from a scale perspective, these kind of processes will greatly help in the future.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just about you personally. It's always great to get entrepreneurs on here and kind of talk about some things that are a little bit more personal to them. So I would ask, like, what's been your most difficult point along your own journey, and what do you have a story that felt at the time that was like almost impossible to overcome? Like what's been probably one of the most difficult times and one of the best times? Because one thing that I know about the entrepreneurial road is that there's really big highs and really big lows. It's like rarely a happy medium. You're always up and down, up and down.
Yeah, I think the biggest, the most stressful part of our journey was when you're on the brink of constantly losing out money under the balance sheet and not having the money to pay. That's why also say that seed round was perhaps the most stressful and the most difficult time when we raised. And from a happiness perspective, I think having all my really good engineering friends and a lot of these great people around me is that gives the best pleasure around to come to work and do it every day.
Yeah, for sure. Being able to see the team grow and watch you guys take off what you're doing. This is really exciting. Do you have like a routine? I mean, how are you staying? I'm here with you in 111, and I don't think there's another person in the building, so it could be pretty solitary as it is for all of us right now. But do you have a routine to keep the mental health together? Like how are you approaching each day now?
Yeah, trying to be more structured in my daily life right now. Like as a founder, as an early stage company's founder, I think I'm trying to find hack 'em up for everything. So so just to keep healthy and try to keep things in control. Like recently I read a book called Power of Habits, so I'm trying to instigate those kind of habits in my daily schedule. Besides that, like I had been doing some research on intermittent fasting, and I'm seeing some results on that. So those are some of the hacks I can implement on a daily basis without being too start doing too much physical activity and all these. And from there on, we can go further. And but these are small changes I'm making in my life these days, just to be better at what I do and from a daily schedule perspective.
That's awesome. Do you think that you will always be in some form an entrepreneur? Like one question that I find interesting is whether you think that you'll ever kind of retire or you think that you might just always be creating something. Like how do you think of work?
Yeah, I think I would always be someone who will be starting something. I still keep a list of on my Gmail. I have this draft of ideas that I might jump into in future if I have the opportunity to do it. Given that kind of opportunity is there. So I would all most likely I will again be an entrepreneur if I find an exit or in the company sometime.
That's awesome. Well, Parag, so appreciate you coming on and great episode. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you having me.